we'll jump in. Obviously, today is all about how to land more appointments with major and legacy gift donors and prospects. My name is Jeff Giannotto. I am the director of sales at MarketSmart, but I've been at MarketSmart for about 10 or 11 years here and kind of held every role you can think of within sales and marketing. Starting off with my very first job here was to help reach out to fundraisers really and help set appointments for, back then it was really just my CEO, Greg Warner, who is leading the charge in terms of sales. So I've got a lot of experience, making calls, making outreach, just like yourself, I'm sure, on the front line. And a lot of the recommendations that we're going to make here today are kind of taking what does work both in the for-profit world and the nonprofit world, but translating it, specifically to major and legacy gift prospecting and qualification, discovery, outreach, setting appointments, etc. Now, there is kind of a list of tips here. There's 10 tips and a bonus tip we'll go through here today. And I'll mention in the bottom left here, not to be too salesy, there will be a part at the end of the presentation where I'll talk more about what we truly do here at MarketSmart. But if at any point you're interested in scheduling time with us to learn more about how we can help you set more appointments with major and legacy gift prospects, you can scan that QR code in the bottom left. It's going to be there throughout the presentation. But jumping back to really the meat and potatoes here, we're going to be walking through a few recommendations, suggestions, tips. One is to adjust your mindset. A second one is to recognize the valley of distrust and use engagement calling to cross that valley of distrust, which really crossing it through engagement calling comes down to providing value, which we'll talk about. But there's also things like practicing your dialogue, learning how to really give the recipient on the other line the power. A skill truly to practice out of today is to just be clear and then shut up when you're asking for something actually, and let someone think, let them kind of actually come back to you with a response, leaving voicemails, LinkedIn and texting, and counting your failures. Now, you might already be looking at that list and saying, I do some of these, all of these, etc. But it's a good reminder of the fundamentals here really today, that if you're doing all of these things with as many people as possible, the leads will really come to you, actually. They will set themselves. It won't be such a sort of armoring, used car salesman type of deal. It'll be more Socratic and in a way where they're actually asking you how to take the next step, in a sense. So we'll jump into it, starting off first with a little bit of kind of empathy and understanding that your job isn't easy. I'm sure that's why you're here in the first place and wanting to hear this particular message and such. Gerald Panis, now passed away, but he used to say it's harder to get an appointment than to secure a gift, or getting an appointment is 85% of getting the gift. So I wanted to throw it out to the crowd here first, just to get a sense of what everyone else's opinion is to some degree. I mean, how would you sort of respond to this question? How strongly do you agree or disagree? And there'll be a poll popping up here in a moment for you to fill out. With this statement, though, landing appointments with highly passionate, wealthy supporters is getting harder. So I believe that poll, is popping up right now. So I'm going to see the results flying, and I'll hit end in a moment, and then we'll all get to see the results. But so far, probably not a surprise, most people saying somewhat agree or strongly agree. We'll give it a few more seconds here. Almost everybody has responded. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, people stopped because they heard me counting down. So we'll end the poll. Most people are, saying somewhat agree or strongly agree. I'll share the results here so you can see them. We'll do one other poll just to get a sense from the crowd as well. What's your biggest, though, challenge? Is it that supporters just don't even respond when you reach out? Is it that they do respond, but they just kind of say, well, I don't really need your help, honestly. Or maybe they do respond, but they just kind of keep kicking the rock a little further down the field, or the can rather. Or they just, you're not even sure what to say or do at times, and it's sort of a challenge for you in reaching out to them. So that, again, a poll pop up here in just a moment, and then again we'll view the results together here. So wait 1 second. I think it should be coming here. in a moment. Let's see here. And if it doesn't, if we had a little technological malfunction there, we'll jump ahead. It happens sometimes. Well, I don't want to spend too much time here. So I'd imagine it's spread across the board here, but for the different reasons. So let's, rather than sort of waiting for the poll to pop up, I'll keep jumping ahead and really just jump into what you came here for, the actual tips at hand. So the first tip, and again, as much as these might be things at times, some of them or all of them that you might say, I kind of already say this to myself. It's, I don't know, I play a lot of basketball. It's like working on your crossover, or, working on a bank shot. You might know how to do those things, but it's good to remind yourself that you are not a beggar. You're not a manipulator. You're not extracting something from these people by reaching out to them. You are actually a value provider. You are someone who is a connector. You're a bridge. You help them actually get meaning in their life by deepening their relationship with a charity. So landing these appointments, I know it's kind of just sounds like semantics or something like that, but it's important to walk in with that mindset and really say to yourself, if I land this appointment, when I'm making these calls, when I talk to people, it's in an effort to actually help them and help my mission. It is a good thing. I am doing a good thing. And ultimately, the best way to adjust your mindset around that is to always be asking yourself, how can I provide this person value? If you're constantly thinking that, you're going to orient yourself the right way. Now, part of understanding that mentality is also recognizing the gap that is there between you and this other person. They may be on your list because they gave, or they went to the event, or they signed the petition, or they engage in some way, or they received your services. But that doesn't mean that they've actually got enough trust in you individually to take a meeting with you, to take a call with you. Sometimes my CEO, he likes to talk about, although this is a little bit dated at this point because people don't even go to shoe stores that much. But even when you used to, you go to the shoe store, you're looking at the wall of shoes, somebody comes up to you and is like, hey, do you need any help? And you're like, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. But you are actually looking at shoes. So what's the problem there? You're not really trusting of them just yet. You don't want their help just yet. What could they do though to cross that valley then? You already have brand recognition. They're there standing in the store, but ultimately they're kind of avoiding you in some way. Maybe they don't want to think about it later. Maybe they're worried you're going to sell them something. Maybe they really do just want to do it on their own. There's a million things that they could be thinking. And ultimately, what would get someone, if they're even willing at all, to lean in a little bit deeper is to help them recognize that you are, like we said in the beginning, a value provider. You're not there to bite. You're not going to push them. You're not going to pull their arm. And to really show that and display that, you have to, your actions are going to speak louder than your words, in the sense that, imagine if you really take the time to call someone at least twice and not ask for a meeting, not ask for a gift, just simply learn about them and their interests and why they're connected to the organization. Maybe if you're offering anything, it's just to do something that is, simple and non-solicitous. Maybe you want to send them the next petition. You want to invite them to the next event. You want to take them on a tour. You want to connect them with another donor who shares interests and such. But unless they signal the readiness to actually talk about an appointment, wait, give them some time, let them lean in. It's kind of like, ask them to get married before you even went on a date. So the next question then is, and I'm already alluding to this a bit, but how do you provide value? This might seem like a simple question with a simple answer, but it's very complicated in a good way when you really take into account all the possibilities. And it all, again, just stems really back to thinking, what can you do that really makes them feel good? And ultimately, there's a lot of options, but first, we need to kind of see if we can. We might not be able to listen to them in a sense. They may not actually be talking to us or filling out forms or going to the events or engaging in certain ways. But if they are filling out forms, if they are visiting web pages, if they are, engaging in different ways, these are all different sort of data points that could indicate answers to any or all these questions of what do they care about, who inspires them, how passionate are they, where do they rank you amongst the missions they support, what programs interest them most. So of course, if you know these things, you can align that offer of value even more accurately. But what I mean by an offer of value, this is a big list, so don't try to read it all right away. You'll get these slides. But ultimately, there are a lot of offers. Something that we've found is a tremendously valuable offer from the get-go for a supporter is just to simply give them the opportunity to fill out a survey. It's sort of following the adage of ask for money, you'll get advice, ask for advice, you'll get money. Well, the truth is that adage is nice, but very few people are actually asked for their advice and their opinion. And the ones that do tend to be under assignment and willing to already kind of engage with you in a one-to-one manner. How do we get people who, though, aren't ready to engage with you to still get that experience? It could be through a survey. It could be also just inviting them to engage in a webinar from afar, just like you're doing here with MarketSmart before maybe you decide if there's really interest to learn even more. It could be inviting them through marketing or in person, like an oral history, to tell their story and why they're connected to you. Tours and show and tell sessions are popular as well, but there's a lot of different ways that you can non-solicitously provide value, and ideally in a way that allows a supporter to kind of think about their why. Why are they, engage with you? Why do they support you? And the how of how to actually give will come through you actually, talking with them. So one other factor about providing value, whether it's an in-person experience or a webinar, is that it's proven at this point. This is really a Harvard Business Review study on for-profits, but it's proven, I'm sure you've seen it in your own just day-to-day, that when you engage someone who engaged recently with an offer, they are much more likely to actually answer the phone, and not just answer the phone or take the meeting, but actually have a meaningful conversation with you. So this 700% is that they found when someone filled out a form on a company's website recently, they were 700% more likely to take an appointment with that company. Now, it's sort of a skewed result. It makes sense. Why are they filling out a form recently? Because they're actually interested in you. They're thinking about you. And so therefore, it's more likely that if you reach out and offer a chance to engage, they're more likely to take it. And yet, as simple as that concept is, we don't really practice it in terms of, at least a lot of organizations don't, in terms of portfolio management. A lot of portfolio management ends up getting revolved around kind of quantitative figures, how much have they given, what is their capacity, and less around qualitative, measures such as what are they saying, what are they doing in their own time that would indicate their readiness for outreach. So it's all tied together. They don't, if they're not already taking a meeting or giving, they may not trust you a lot. So therefore, you need to take a route of providing more of an engagement, non-solicitous engagement that includes providing valuable offers to lean in. And when they lean in, when they actually do that, that's when you have a chance to timely reach out and offer assistance and learn more about them. So I see there's a lot of questions flowing through here, some about surveys and stuff. I'm going to try to pack all the Q&A into the end and jump through these 10 recommendations, but I promise I do want to come back to that stuff. I'm not trying to ignore you the whole time, but for a little bit here, I'm just going to jump through some of these because I would bet some of the questions are actually even somewhat answered by some of the tactics, or just they may be tied together in some of these tactics. Simple one that, a lot of us, me in sales, you in fundraising, we may not really practice. Maybe you did it when you first started the job and you were first trying to figure out your script and stuff, but it's no different than, after the game 1 of the Western Conference Finals last night, those guys went back and watched tape. They did, because they needed to see how they did and why they did and what the defense did and how they reacted. So times have changed for sure, and if you haven't actually written down your script, whether it's for a voicemail or an engagement call or a meeting, ultimately it's worth writing it down, practicing it, and also reviewing the tape, like record the call, actually diagnose it. Nowadays, we even have ChatGPT, of course. So take your script, pump it in there, ask it what the best practices are. Take the transcript from your dialogue, put it in there, ask it what you could have done better, what you're doing well. It's pretty amazing how much feedback you can get. Now, something that you'll find, any person who's analyzing their own dialogue, is that you're probably talking too much. You're probably not asking enough questions, and you're probably not answering enough questions with questions. In terms of someone says, well, what program do you think I should support? Don't just answer that question. Ask them a question about their life. Well, what was important to you? What inspired you? Maybe you have some of those answers, but I won't even try to put down the dialogue, but it's just keep that in mind. You should be asking questions for most of the conversation, and you can't show them you know them unless you've been asking those questions. You can't really be that relevant unless you've been listening to their needs and their wants. And of course, being emotional, enthusiastic just kind of comes with the territory. One thing I'll say also on questions is that the most important question you can ask is an implication question, really in a Socratic manner, letting the person answer a question about what would be the impact of doing X. So they say, I really want to give through my family foundation. Well, that's really interesting. What would that mean to your family? What's the significance? Of course, I know you have the foundation, but like, how would your kids think about you? How would your grandkids think about, having them truly reflect on the impact and such. Another factor here in every conversation is giving the recipient the power. There's a lot of ways to do this. A lot of the times, as we're highlighting with this you here, it revolves around trying to not think about you, but them rather, although we're saying you in a sense, but truly putting the power in their hands. Ultimately telling them something like, for instance, look, whether you make a donation to us or some other charity, that's really not the point here. Right now, I just want to help you think about your story, and if philanthropy would be a means to an end to help you really fulfill the story that you've written for yourself. If we can be on the other end of that, great. Even if we're not, I'm happy I can help you. But truly kind of disarming them and letting them know that you're an objective, helper that helps build those bridges. And when it comes to the meeting itself, just putting the power in their hands and saying, look, I would absolutely love, to help you with this and talk with you. But by all means, it's up to you. I'm not trying to push you, and it's on your timetable. So the more you kind of push and nudge them and get salesy about it and get all about your own, desires and such, it bleeds through every time. We've all been on the other end of that. You think you're masking it. You're not. They can tell that you want what you want, and they can tell when you're genuinely being a provider of value. As mentioned, something though that exudes this sort of giving of power to them and not being so salesy is asking a lot of questions and not trying to sell them on something. Just saying, this is how we would help you with X. And then asking them if that's even a path they want to go down, if it would even bring meaning to their life, but not trying to sell them. This would bring meaning to your life in a sense. Listen to the answers, align your programs and initiatives, show that you care. So we're jumping now to another one that you may have heard in other sort of circles and such, but it is one that goes overlooked very easily, which is that be comfortable with the silence. Be comfortable with even how uncomfortable it can be at times. Ultimately, you want to make them feel good, present them with value that they'll gain from meeting with you, which is really aligned with their life and not your goals. And when you do actually ask for the meeting, count to 10, truly take a sip of water, sit there, let them think about it. Because I promise you, when they're thinking, it's not usually to say no, actually. If they're going to say no, they typically are just kind of say no. But if they're thinking about, they're wondering sort of perhaps even a question they want to ask back to you. So just let them think for a second. It's hard to do. Don't sort of come to them and just say, hey, the value of meeting with me is just, I could update you on what's going on here. You haven't been in touch with us in a while. You haven't been to a meeting in a while. Wouldn't you like to just be updated? I think everybody just kind of immediately sort of feels sold when you're doing that. What do you really want from me? You don't You don't want to just update me, type of thing. So it's not everything I'm saying here is not to say you can't tell them what you do for your job, and you can't, be direct about the fact that your role in this organization is to help people make donations. But at the same time, you don't want to sort of do smoke and mirrors and act like you're trying to help them with one thing, but not the other in a sense. You can say that is my role, but I'm not just inviting you to come to this meeting to just update you on stuff and then suddenly push a proposal in front of you. The key is if you've been doing everything else that we've been saying, if you've been asking questions, you've been listening, you'll be in a position to ask the question in a more relevant, less sort of salesy way in a sense. Your support's been so wonderful. It really means a lot. Not everyone gets it like you. That's why I wonder if you would consider giving some feedback and advice on X, Y, and Z program. It would be invaluable. Can we get together either next Tuesday or Thursday? So you're truly inviting them, and fulfill that, by the way, if you do that offer. Don't have them come and then suddenly ask them for a donation. Truly make the meeting about getting their feedback and advice. If they want to ask about a gift, if they want to go down that path, sure, you can have that conversation. But truly engage them about their story and invite them to lean in and provide feedback and be a guide to you. During our last conversation, you mentioned X, Y, and Z. It would be great to learn more about your thoughts on that. How will we get together? So an example of this that we use with our clients is we do surveys ourselves. And one key question that we find is always a great icebreaker for the frontline fundraiser is we ask in the survey, was there an influential person or event in your life that inspired you to appreciate our mission? And we always recommend to our customers, don't just call that survey respondent and basically say, you may not do in these words, but you answered a survey and you said X, that you're interested in giving some, I'm here. I'm the person who helps people who are interested in giving. How can I help you, basically? No, reach out more like this, where you'd say, I noticed you mentioned your spouse or, your brother, whoever was really influential in regards to why you support our mission. I'd love to hear more about that story. Do you mind if we just take 5-10 minutes in the next week? Could I call you and just to learn a bit more? And ultimately, you're going to get a much higher response rate to that than, hey, would you like a meeting so I can update you? Your story's fascinating. It would be great to learn more about you and your interests so I can work on your behalf, help you get more out of your relationship with our shared mission. Why don't we set up some time next week? So the common trend here is that you're only really asking for the meeting once you've learned about their passions and their interests, and you can really align that passion and interest with an offer of value. Another easily missed item, because it almost can feel antiquated at this point, is leaving voicemails. But the funny thing about voicemails is how sort of abruptly they sort of enter your world differently than other messages. I mean, just myself, when I get out of a call for an hour internally, and I look at my phone, I've got 3 texts, but I've got one voicemail. One voicemail. Who left me a voicemail? And so it catches you off guard in a good way. And people do. I mean, think about yourself, whether you're reading the script or you actually listen to it. I'm amazed, honestly, how many times I listen to the voicemail and it's, Care First, Blue Cross Blue Shield offering me a free consult or something I just don't need or want, in a sense. But I still end up listening to it. Imagine if you truly took the time to be even just slightly relevant, mentioning, hey, I noticed that you had gone to the event 6 months ago, but unless I'm reading correctly, I don't think you've had much engagement with us since then. I just wanted to reach out, let you know that we recognize you, we support you, and we'd love to chat with you. So it doesn't have to be that sort of strategic as much as you're just sort of almost like a billboard on the highway, kind of planting a seed that you never know will mature. It only takes a second to add that into the mix. I'm connected with a lot of fundraisers on LinkedIn, but I tend to find that they spend time typically posting on LinkedIn about sort of academia in a way of fundraising, but they don't tend to always, I know this isn't unanimous, view LinkedIn actually as sort of another one of those billboards on the highway to sort of invite people to engage with the mission. So ultimately there's a few ways to think about this. Number one, I'm mentioning LinkedIn and texting. I would say from my experience, it's good to ask first if you can text. And now I'm not talking about like the mass marketing SMS. I'm talking you meet a donor and you say, hey, by the way, some donors like to interact with me in different ways. Are you more of like a texting type of person? Would you like that? Do you prefer that over me calling you? If they say yes to that, my experience is you will never find a higher response rate channel than texting someone who said, yes, you can text me. So, and it's fast too. It's a lot better than having a call or leave a voicemail. You text them maybe a few hours later, maybe it's the middle of the night, whatever. On their own time, they text you back. But again, you should ask for that permission. With LinkedIn, there's some simple things that everyone should practice. You should connect with that supporter before you call or visit them. Let them see your face. Let them even click around on your profile. Let them kind of get to know you before you get to the meeting. You should be actively liking posts and comments, both of your own company's work to promote it, but also of the supporters, and what they're engaging with. They, just like you, when your friend likes your post, they like it when you like their post. They like it when you like their comment. They notice it. It makes you feel a little more familiar. It helps kind of close that gap on the valley of distrust. But I know for some, myself even included times, it's kind of not my style of doing things, even in my personal life, honestly, but it really is important. So just try to do it every day, like something, comment on something, and then send people value, connecting with them on LinkedIn. You could send them the report. You could send them, even the annual report, for instance, just as a light touch, asking for nothing, just saying, hey, just thought you might like this. And I figured I'd send it to you myself personally. And then one last one is consider investing in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. That lets you do a lot more automation, as well as it allows you to do a lot more prospecting than just the traditional LinkedIn platform. One last one, then we'll do a bonus, and then we'll jump into Q&A. And I'm just taking a look at my clock here. But we've got some Q&A, and we also got a little bit of just giving everyone an overview of MarketSmart. But truly, count your failures. There is a pattern somewhere in there. Whether it's, I remember hearing a client of ours recently say, we've counted it up, and it takes us about 19 calls to 19 different people before we get one answer in a single day. All right, well, now you know the pace. When you get that no, you're just one no closer to a yes. And I know that seems, I don't know, just sort of silly, but it matters. It really does. If you can think about it more like a game like that, the no's don't hit as hard. You can just move past it and jump to the next one. And last one is leverage referrals. This is one that is so easy to do, but so easy to forget. You had this great conversation with the person. You hit every single point you were supposed to. They're feeling great. You're feeling great. They want another meeting. Everything went right. And it's kind of like, all right, at that peak of interest, would there be any better person to ask, hey, by the way, just asking. If the answer is no, and if you have to rack your brain, don't even worry about it. But I figure I'd do my due diligence. Is there anybody that you amongst your friends that you think would love to talk to us that I should really be engaging right now? Would you make, and again, I'm not asking you to be obligated to do this, but I should ask. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask. Would you be willing to actually introduce me to them? Think about how many conversations you've had in your life and how few times you've asked those questions. Then think about how many more gifts you would have closed had you done it that way. Think about how many big gifts you've closed when the donor just did that on their own organically. So again, you don't want to be too pushy about it. You don't want to force feed them, but ultimately, it's worth asking certain moments. So we just ran through a lot quickly, these 10 recommendations, but truly, if you even enact only some of these, but if you certainly enact all of them, you're going to have more meaningful conversations. You're going to help donors and prospects kind of move themselves through the consideration process until they're ready for outreach. So I see. It's actually hard for me to keep up with. There's been some interesting back and forth in the chat here, but I think you guys had a conversation. It's hard for me to keep track of while I'm doing the presentation. So we're gonna round out now the presentation. Only maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes here left. So we'll probably end early. But if you guys don't mind, I'd really love to explain to you how MarketSmart's services fit into all of this. How do we help you, set more appointments and land more meetings with major and plan giving donors and prospects? I'll only do that for a second. I don't want to overdo it. And then after that, maybe a few minutes of that, we'll jump right into just Q&A for this webinar. Now, ultimately, the way MarketSmart helps here is that we get people to lean in and tell us about their interests and such so that you can have meaningful engagement calls and provide value that's relevant to their experience. But what that really boils down to is helping pre-qualify supporters. So that's to say, inviting people who aren't already in portfolios to just tell us where they are in the consideration process. We also help use automation to warm individuals who come through that qualification process and basically say it's a maybe. It's in the future I'd consider, giving to you. So we want to, allocate and route the people who say they're ready to the frontline fundraiser so that they can do engagement calling and build relationships. But there's always going to be the leftover people who have potential, but they're not quite portfolio ready. And ultimately, all of this leads to helping you set more appointments, either by engaging people who are ready kind of right from the get-go, or who have sort of bubbled up over time through that cultivation. So just to help place this in sort of the world of different tools you might use, there's identification tools, right? There's, wealth screening, data modeling, RFM scoring, etc. What I'm describing is a system that sits essentially between identification and actual complete qualification and caseload population by the true staff, the frontline fundraisers in a sense. And from there just follows your kind of standard process of caseload management. So it's almost like we're elongating the process, but so that we can line up self-identified warm leads for the frontline fundraisers, less wild goose chases, fewer sort of just calling someone because they have a high capacity score but have never leaned in. So we scale discovery with unassigned supporters, qualify their readiness for mid-level major and plan gifts, assign those outreach ready leads, warm up others who need more time. And again, it all leads to more meetings. So in essence, we call this the 3 S's. We've got a methodology, our SMART strategy, that is actually, there for your taking. If you want, you could take all the concepts, surveys, automation, anything I'm saying, and you could take our book, which is free to download, and try to enact it in-house. The strategy works, whether we do it or you do it. The reason, though, organizations come and work with us is that while they sort of can, in theory, create some of the things I'm describing, in practice, it becomes very hard to execute. Either maybe they don't have the staff or the time, or they're just looking for expertise and lift that they truly don't feel that they have internally. But in essence, what we develop is a strategy that entails using, as I've mentioned in different ways, surveys to invite supporters to self-qualify, automation to nurture supporters who self-qualify as having deferred interest. That drives them, when we say VIP microsite, to web pages that allow them to think about how and why to step up through major and planned giving. And then we score all of that. We score their initial survey response so we can pick off the hot opportunities from the get-go. And we score, are they opening and clicking through on the automation? Are they on the web page about the major donor? Are they clicking on sample bequest language? These are all qualitative data points, what they're saying, what they're doing, that indicate their readiness for outreach, and ultimately line you up with people who we say kind of fit the prioritization pentagon. You're calling people who already gave you permission to reach out. They've self-identified that the timing is right for that outreach. You have a reason to reach out in that you know a bit about their story. They're already leaning in, and they have self-identified capacity. As often as possible, the goal of what we do is to line you up with calls and meetings with people who represent that pentagon. And it really does work. We've got clients from really every vertical. Here's Shalita saying, it's working. You should see my pipeline. And when I call people, they're actually ready to talk. Here for Jared, your system yielded opportunities with absolute gems that I don't think we would have engaged otherwise. Or Cheryl at American Lung, people are reaching out to me instead of me reaching out to them. or Joseph at Compassion, with their engagement fundraising system, fewer staff can accomplish a lot more. So in essence, it's almost like we give you a discovery officer in terms of the outcome of what we do, reaching out to the unassigned, getting them to self-identify, allocating the ones that are ready for outreach, but nurturing the ones that have potential down the line. Even better is that we're not just a platform. We are providing you human beings on our end. You have a dedicated customer success manager and implementation specialist, and they handle all the copy, all the design, all the content creation for everything I'm describing. They write every word on the survey, every word on the automation, every part of the website, using your assets, your branding, your photos, and going through rounds of review. So it all gets, personalized and approved by you. But the point is, this isn't just a big project on marketing and comms desk. We are delivering a strategy that works with a software that works, and we're doing all the heavy lifting for creating things, plus delivering a lot of support for training and making sure you're getting as much ROI as possible out of the system, including a special Russell James inspired training course. So again, we're seeing thrills across the board from our clients, and really all I'd ask is that if this resonates with you at all, that whether it's through you'll see on the next screen the QR code in the bottom left, or if you want to go to our website and peruse around a little bit, then request a demo, take a quick call with us. I promise we're not going to push you or strong arm you, just like all of our recommendations today. It's really more just about showing you what we do, seeing if there's a fit, and if there is, then we can talk more. But if there's not, that's okay too. Now, another reason you might want to reach out to us is that we have the potential, and I say potential because you have to qualify for it, to make a guarantee of results. So there are qualifiers for this that we list on our website, but many of our clients do qualify for it, and we're able to guarantee that they'll raise at least 10 times their investment in their first year, or they get their money back. But really our goal long-term is to generate 100-to-1 ROI. Just a few more slides here, and then I'll break for just Q&A. But ultimately, again, the strategy works, whether you do it yourself or with MarketSmart, of using surveys to qualify, using automation to multiply your cultivation efforts, tracking, when people visit pages related to major and planned gifts, and then targeting your outreach on people who lean in those ways. But the difference in doing it yourself first with a vendor like us is significant in terms of just the execution. It takes a lot longer with a lot more people and a lot more trial and error, and just a lot of manual work doing it yourself, when in reality you could work with us and we'll have it up and running in just a few months and guarantee results. We have a lot of different organizations that we work with, as I mentioned, from many different types of missions. I promise if you take the time to talk with us, there will be a relevant mission that we can show you of how we're doing exactly this and helping them, with an organization just like you. So that's the end of my spiel. I appreciate you all taking a second here to just let us tell you a bit about what we do. I know that was still pretty high level, so please, if that resonates with you at all, we'd love to just chat with you for a second, see if there's even a fit, see if you do qualify for our guarantee. And if so, then we can talk some more. If not, you'll still just walk away with some practical ideas. We do also have this webinar feedback survey, and also welcome all of your advice and feedback there as well. But with that, I want to open the floor. And there's kind of, I'm not sure why Zoom does it this way, but you have the chat. There's obviously been questions coming in that way, but then there is sort of the Q&A function as well. So I'm going to go over to the Q&A side first. If you guys don't mind, I know you've been throwing questions in there throughout, but as I mentioned, I couldn't quite see them all as they're flying by. If you don't mind just reposting your question now, if you want to have it addressed live, I'd be happy to do that. But starting on the Q&A side, so this isn't in the chat tool, there was an anonymous person who said, when my CEO and I have a meeting with a major donor, how do I get her to listen more and talk less without offending? It's a good question, and certainly not going to be easy with everybody. I think there's a few things to do. A lot of the times, especially I think for senior leadership and a CEO, data and facts are going to speak a lot more to them than just your, anecdotal evidence or thoughts in a sense. And so one place you can go that actually has answers to your question, there's this is a sales tool, but it's called gong.io, G-O-N-G, gong.io, and they have a lot of studies. That's a tool that actually analyzes sales conversations in particular, but they have a lot of reports and studies that help you show how successful sales calls tend to encompass about 75% listening and asking questions and 25% actually talking. So there's sort of data out there you could pull from. But then also if you have just an actual example of your own or their experience. Remember Mrs. Johnson, when we did it that way, it really didn't work, and we only realized it after the fact. And so just trying to give them real examples of why they should take that route. But then I think another thing that is important to do is not just make the suggestion, but equip them to do it. Write out those questions that you think are important for them to ask. Let them even collaborate with you and say, what do you think? Do you think these are the right questions to ask? I know easier said than done sometimes with the CEO. They may not have a lot of time, but the idea is to make them, feel ownership over that strategy in a sense. So there's more I could always say about that one, but I'll jump to the next one here. And Chris, I see you've got your hand raised. Do you mind maybe typing in what you were thinking, unless it's just too long to type in there? But I see Spencer here asked, what tactics would you use if you don't have any phone numbers, just emails, particularly to acquire phone numbers organically through outreach? Ultimately, I've see this question asked in different ways by different organizations. It could be that they want, phone numbers, but they have emails. It could be that they have emails, but they want phone numbers, but there's something missing in the data set. And it really comes down to the only foolproof way to do that in mass. It goes back to the recommendation today that we were talking about with calls, but to do in marketing of providing non-solicitous value. There has to be an exchange of value. If you want something from them, you may not want money, but even just getting their phone number, there needs to be something in return. So an example might be if you were a higher education institution, if you offered people the ability to download a digital yearbook, or even just for any charity, download our annual report, there has to be some sort of offer you're providing, then in return you can say we need X, Y, and Z data points for you to fill out this form in a sense, and then you'll get self-reported information. We get a lot of updated contact info through a survey. A survey might feel like you're extracting something from them, but again, they may be someone who really has something important to tell you, but no one's ever called them, no one's ever visited them, no one's ever asked them what their opinion is. And so ultimately that too is actually a valuable offer. But I would just say that there needs to be an exchange of value. I see, I'm going to jump over to the side here. I see some of the questions coming in. One recommendation from Deborah, I've always found it helpful, this is going back to the first question, to take the time to share information on the donor and prep the person going along on the plan for the meeting, including why it's important to me to let the donor talk more than us. So I agree, Deborah, whether it's writing the questions out or just doing that initial prep can make a big difference. Joanne asked, how does MarketSmart use AI in material surveys and meetings? For us, we like to kind of say it's human enhanced. So it's not truly like there's a robot back there that's building everything out for us and there's no human interaction. It's more like we use AI to help us build faster and more efficiently and do better quality assurance. So there's AI kind of built into how we create everything we do for our customers. But there's also AI in that our automation is influenced by what we're learning about the supporter through their survey responses. So there's some segmentation and changes that occur there in terms of the automation. So yeah, in a few different ways, Joe, in there. Let's see here. I see, Kelly, you were asking how many mailings have you sent those people? I sent about 11 before I gave up, and they're a mix of newsletter surveys, birthdays, giving anniversary cards, etc. Try to get some handwritten stuff in there and handwrite the addresses. Um, that's probably a little bit particular to the organization, the answer to that question, although there is also probably a statistical, answer of sorts. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a great job, honestly. You're really trying to provide a lot of different opportunities for people to lean in that aren't just revolving around asking for money and treating them like an ATM. If it's not delivering necessarily the result you want, I would say that not because you're doing it wrong, but it just means it's worth tweaking a bit. Maybe you're sending too much. Maybe you need to actually have a call task placed in the middle of all of that, where you're actually reaching directly out to the person in the sense that no matter how good the offer is, inevitably there are people who are just completely ignoring everything that you're sending to them. And yet, for some reason, if you called them, that would be the way that they'd engage. Or maybe you need to try LinkedIn or you need to try text. But I would sort of try different tactics and also consider breaking up the pattern a bit to kind of so we talk about it in our 3-to-1 pads of sort of providing value 2 to 3 times, but then asking. So it's almost like you don't want to go so far in either direction. You don't want to only be asking. You also don't want to only be providing value. You kind of want a mixture in between where you're providing value that then leads into an ask, so that there's some reciprocity that you've built, some give for the take, if you will. I'm jumping over here. Maggie had asked, how often do you send a survey? Here's the thing, is a survey, and I think this gets lost in the mix often with how many surveys there are in life, in the nonprofit world as well. The power of a survey is not getting response. The power of a survey is making people feel heard. So, and in fact, getting a response and not making people feel heard could come at a detriment to your mission, in a sense that what if they told you something really, really sensitive and important to them, but nobody even acknowledged that they leaned in? That might not feel good. So my answer to your question is we send surveys as often, the frequency is aligned with the bandwidth of the frontline fundraising team or person to actually personally call or visit at least the top respondents, the people who show immediate interest. We want to make sure if somebody answers this survey and says, basically, I want to talk to someone, I want to give through donor advised funds, you're already in my will and you didn't know it, that week, ideally even like within the next 24 to 48 hours, they're getting personal outreach from someone on staff, thanking them, asking them questions, learning more about their story. There's going to also be everybody else, the people who answer your survey, but they didn't immediately show interest or ask for outreach. And that's what automation can really carry the load for. If they're not really ready for your outreach, you still want to make them feel heard, but there's only one of you. You can't spread yourself to everybody in that response. Let automation multiply you. So you can personally engage the people who say, I'm ready, but this virtual version of you could provide free established value, to those individuals who said maybe, basically, or possibly, or they're not even really self-identifying interest. They're just answering the survey and reflecting on their story. So work through it at a pace that you can actually respond to people, which to finally come down to a quantitative answer of sorts. For our clients, it tends to mean that once or twice a quarter, they're picking another sort of small batch of people to send a survey to. When I say small, it's somewhere like a few hundred to a few thousand at a time. And again, only moving on when they really feel like they can respond. Someone said, we have an aging donor base, and with all the phone scams going around with seniors, they have been reluctant to take my calls and have a discussion. Any ideas advice on how to overcome this? I mean, I'm just spitballing in a sense. I don't know if I have the exact answer just right here, like from my own experience, but just knowing that it's an aging donor base, and this still could fall in the realm of them, feeling scammed or something like that. But you might want to Number one, be sending them some sort of direct mail in advance leading up to your call that's letting them know that you'll be reaching out so they see it's coming. Maybe it even involves in terms of listening to your supporters and providing value that even if you don't say like host a whole webinar, that you find, some sort of report from a leading source that helps seniors understand when they're being scammed and what to look out for and things of that nature. Be a trusted source, of how to how to help them navigate that challenge. And by doing so, they will trust you more when you reach out. But it is definitely a challenge in general that muddies the water for all of us. That just the scams and different things out there. But that's what comes to mind first. Is potentially the letter is a little simplistic, but maybe even just sending out of, hey, here's a report from Experian or whatever it is on how to protect your data. So those were the ones in Q&A, but I know we've had others here. Let's see. I'm going to scroll back up. Feel free others to ask questions as they come along. Someone had asked, does your system work globally? We're UK based. There are parts of our services like the fundraising report card that are accessible to anyone in the world. The marketing services that we provide relative to surveying and such. Right now, we're focused on US based clients in terms of new customers coming on board, but that may change down the line. But for right now, we're not able to service new non-US customers in a sense. Let's see here. Just scrolling back up. And also see if there's any other questions. I really appreciate everybody sticking around here and just leaning in with all these questions. Someone had asked here, and someone even responded to it in asking, does connecting on Facebook, Instagram work the same as LinkedIn, or is that too personal? And someone would respond, Facebook and Instagram, they find are too personal, and said they don't have a professional Instagram account. Yeah, that's about that I was going to go down to, is that it may not be the case, but in most cases, unless you are a business owner, you don't tend to have like a professional Facebook or Instagram page in a sense, whereas your LinkedIn page is for your profession in a sense. And so I think it is one of the better mediums to consider. And yeah, thank you for this these takeaways here, Lorinda. Very nice. I wonder, were you using maybe AI perhaps to do that? I don't know, but either way, it looks really nice. Thank you for sharing that with the group. Other questions? I'm trying to see if there was ones I missed from earlier here, but feel free if you have any others. You guys were trading some good tips to each other, so I think this is a good working session for everybody. But we may be out of questions at this point. Let me scroll back down. Well, if we are, then I appreciate everybody tuning in. And yeah, I would just say again, if in general, the concept of using marketing to bridge that valley of distrust, especially with people who are currently unassigned, it resonates with you and you're looking for solutions and trying to figure out how you can set more appointments with people that you're not even talking to. We've got a pretty amazing solution that can potentially guarantee ROI. So I just recommend you reach out, take a just exploratory call with us, and we'll see if there's any way we can help you. And at the very least, if we can't, we'll show you some examples of how it's worked for others that you can kind of steal from and take in-house. But all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. For those stateside here, have a great weekend, long weekend. Even if you're not stateside, have a great weekend as well, of course. And thank you very much.